Question was asked of me, Dan, what are you doing with your 11th, 12th, 13th, and beyond round picks? And I said, you know what? I feel like we've touched on it a little bit, but we haven't really done a show on it yet. And then someone else saw Josh's awesome show where he did, I think he had 49 or something like that, and was like, Dan, you got to do this. And I was like, fine. So here we are. It's late round Flyers on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Welcome to the show. I'm Dan Besbris. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Follow on social at Dan Besbris. Old Man Squad on Twitter. Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. Today's show will be exploring the guys to take at the very bitter end of your fantasy draft, meaning basically once you've finished out your starting 10, who are the guys that you're going to take to plop on your bench that have a chance to make a positive impact on your team. These are generally players that have an opportunity to do more or to be ranked significantly higher than where they're being drafted. But there's a lot of different ways that they can get there. These are not likely to be extraordinarily late-ranked guys that I expect to play all 82 games. Those guys are not super helpful for your team. They're a little bit better on the head-to-head side than they are on Roto, if only because at least then you're not taking zeros with the games cap. You just want the guys that have that infinite upside. But there's a bunch of different reasons why guys might end up in that spot. So today we have, I forget the number, 32? Something like that. 30 some odd names that are going late that have some opportunity. And I've ranked them on today's program. Please drop a like on the show as we're getting going here. Comment if you feel so inclined. Please subscribe. We are rocket boosting into this millennium. Please subscribe. And if you're listening after the fact, throw that 5-star review on it. And yeah, that just goes a long way. So reminder, these are the late Flyers. These are players going later than 120. So effectively after the 10th round of your 12-team league, standard, redraft, that kind of thing. And basically players that I think have a shot to post numbers inside the top 100 in 9 category formats. And I don't know why I have this like rogue exclamation point that you guys are going to watch me delete because it's bothering me. There. Now it's gone. That was bugging me. So again, we're looking for guys that are going to take that jump into the next area. This show is brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football and basketball coming up in a couple of weeks, 15 days away. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. If you think you know your stuff, terrific. You've got an even better opportunity. Jump in on the $200,000 mega contest by picking 5 games against the spread every week for a chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the sporting event is over, head down to the online casino, get in on some blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. This is about, for those that are watching, about half of the names on your screen right now. I thought this would be a more fun way to do it because anybody that's tuning in can just kind of see the names laid out. It's zoomed in a little weird. I don't know why it's doing that. I'm going to attempt to highlight the player I'm talking about while we talk about them. That's probably not going to last because anytime I take the focus off of that sheet, the highlight will also come off of that sheet. Also, I have ranked the players, and I'll say these for those that are listening to the show, using airplane emojis because they're Flyers. So, wanted a flying emoji. 0 airplanes is almost no faith in the player to get something done. 1 is a little bit. 2 is I feel pretty good about him. And 3 is these are the guys that I'm probably targeting in this range once you hit basically round 11 before I move down to the next threshold. So it's basically this is priority number 1, priority number 2, priority number 3. And then we'll explain ourselves as we work our way through because each player has kind of their own little individual story. They are in order of pre-rank on the Yahoo board, not in order of how many airplane emojis that I've given them because I'm a 12-year-old. But we will, again, make sure you guys can both see and hear that. At 120. And this one, I could have started at 121, I guess. But 120 is Keyonte George. He's a 1 airplane selection. And the reason is, I think that he's probably better served as a specific build, a punt type player, as it were, because we saw George down the stretch last season playing pretty significant minutes and being an absolute dumpster fire for fantasy purposes. Not because he wasn't putting up some numbers, because he did during the latter stages of this past season, but because he did it so incredibly inefficiently that he was doing way more damage than he was good for your fantasy team. Over the entire season, Keyonte was at 13 points, 4.5 assists, and 2 3-pointers with high turnovers, low defensive stats, good free throw, and abysmal field goal percent. Nope, excuse me, that's incorrect. Let me make sure I get that number right. If we're going to do this, we got to do it right, ladies and gentlemen. No, that was right. 13, 4.5. Yeah, okay. Thought I got that wrong for a sec. Didn't get that wrong. Got it right. And this had him well outside the top 200 because the turnovers were too high and the field goal percent was too low and the defensive stats were too low. And as much as there's, an outline, it's pretty far away if you care about field goal percent and turnovers. He's going to get plenty of opportunity this year. Presumably the minutes will be 30 because he was at 27 for the year last season. Down the stretch, he was much more in that 30 range. And I think the scoring will probably be fine. Probably looking at somewhere in the 15 to 18 points per game range. And you're probably looking at more like 5+ assists as well. But that team does still have other ball handling guards on it. So it's not all just going to be the Keyonte George show. 17 points, 16 points, 5.5 assists, something to that effect. But 39% shooting, does that come up to like 40, 41? Maybe. Does the 3-point percent get better? Probably makes more than 2 per game. And so you're looking at a guy who's likely to be much more valuable in a points format. Certainly more valuable in an 8-cat over 9. But more than anything, you just need to turn off his worst categories. It's as simple as that. Don't worry about turnovers. Don't worry about field goal. And Keyonte George actually gets on the board. Last year, over the final 2 months, he averaged 16 points and about 5 assists. And if you were punting turnovers and field goal percent, he was number 127. So he was close. I think with small improvements over this offseason and just, getting better, even with those punts, we're probably looking at someone that could eke inside the top 100. And that is why he is a 1 airplane selection. Next name on the list is Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's a 3 airplane selection, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, oh yes, 3 airplane selection. That's a lot of airplanes. Trayce is a similar story. Last year, he was much better down the stretch than he was at the beginning of the year. But we only really got to see him log significant minutes at the very end, the real tail end of the season. And he looked good. He's a bad foul shooter. We know that. But he's going to be a significant positive in field goal percent. He's going to be great in defensive stats. Last year down the stretch in 25 minutes a game, he was at 11-7 with 2.6 combined steals and blocks on 69% shooting from the field. That had him ranked number 86. I think he probably gets back to that 24-25 minute range. And I know the Warriors have a bunch of different options. They've got Draymond they can run at center. They could go small and extra Draymond center with more Kyle Anderson, who I guess technically could probably play some center. They have Kuminga, who probably won't play center, but they have options if they don't want to go Trayce Jackson-Davis. But I think this team is just getting younger now. They have to. They were too old. So you insert the guys that can get off the ground and run for an extended period of time, and it makes the team better around them. And Jackson-Davis is one of those guys. And the nice thing about him, too, is that not only was he effective down the stretch in 25 minutes, that's despite the poor foul shooting. If you punted free throws during that same 16 to 20 game stretch to end the year, he was top 50 in that particular build. And that is why he's a guy I think you need to be targeting, because he has top 100 potential without a punt, and he has way higher potential with 1 punt. PJ Washington is the next one. Oh, by the way, Trayce Jackson-Davis was number 121. PJ's number 122. And yes, a lot of these players are clustered in that 11th round chunk, so, might not be super easy to get the ones you like. PJ is a one, you heard me, one airplane emoji for a couple of reasons. The biggest one is his percentages both stink. But it's also worth pointing out that down the stretch last year, he shot 42% from the field and 59% at the free throw line. And over the last 15 games, he was still ranked inside the top 90. So maybe I should have given PJ 2 airplane emojis. Call him 1.5. 12 points, 7 boards, 1.3 steals, a block, and 2 3-pointers on percentages that frankly couldn't get any worse than what they are during that stretch. When he went on a heater, and it only lasted for about 2.5 weeks, but when PJ went on a heater, he was posting top 50 fantasy numbers. And it's all going to be a balancing act. He'll have a heater where he's top 50. He'll have a cold spell where he's top 150. Where does that level off? Probably around top 100, maybe even a tiny bit better. I like PJ as a late pick. And in fact, I'm going to change it from 1 airplane emoji to 2. I'm going to do it right here while we're talking about it. You guys can watch me do it just so you believe that I'm doing it for real. All right, PJ's 2 airplane emojis now. I think he's got a pretty good shot, actually, to get inside the top 110 in 9-cat straight up. And I think he's got a real nice shot if you punt his worst category, which is either going to be field goal or free throw. And again, just looking at what that looked like towards the end of last year. If you punt his worst category during that stretch, PJ was number 67, which is effectively the sort of -1 rankings board. Norman Powell is a 1 airplane emoji. And I'm not moving off of that one for Norm because Kawhi's going to play. There was this weird brief moment where everybody was like, oh, Norman Powell, you got to go get him. It's like, okay, well, they didn't say Kawhi's out for the year. They just said that, he's ramping up slowly. And Kawhi himself said he wanted to play on opening night. I don't think that's going to happen, but what are we talking about? A week, 2 weeks, 3, max, 4? Okay, you get a month of good out of Norman Powell. He'll probably be top 80, something like that over that month. But when Kawhi's healthy, Powell's not good enough. We saw it last year. When one star was down, Norm still wasn't a top 100 guy. So in my eyes, Powell is more like your 12th or 13th round pick, not the 11th, because I don't think there's a boatload of upside built in. I think instead you're treating him like a free agent hot pickup, and you're just going to try to ride him as long as Kawhi is ramping up. Number 126. Sorry, Powell was 125. 126 is Josh Hart. He's a 2 airplane emoji guy. I have some faith in Hart, certainly more so now after the trade. Last year, Hart in 33 minutes a game was number 125 in 9-cat. The field goal percent was particularly low during that span, but I don't expect it to be a ton higher. And then remember, down the stretch, Josh was playing about 40 minutes a ball game, and in that spot, he was top 80. He's not going to play 40 minutes a game, but given how unbelievably thin the Knicks are right now, he legitimately could average 35, 36 minutes a ball game. Because who's left? It was going to be Josh Hart fighting with DiVincenzo for the backup wing minutes, and now he's a starting wing because they traded DiVincenzo, and they lost Isaiah Hartenstein, and they lost Mitchell Robinson. They brought in Cat, so they traded away Julius Randle. So they sent away 2 shooting guard to power forward size guys and brought in a center. That opens up a lot. So it's really just about minutes for Hart. And in 34, 35 minutes a game, he'll be a top 100 guy in 9-cat. I don't think you need to punt anything. Relatively well-rounded player. Doesn't score a whole lot, but who the hell cares? He rebounds exceptionally well from a shooting guard spot. He passes well. He's a ball mover. And if you get okay percentages, he'll probably be inside that top 100. At 127 is a 3 airplane emoji, and that's Al Horford, who was, for some reason, the most dropped player in fantasy basketball yesterday. And I know we're still 2.5 or a little over 2 weeks out, but what? So here's the issue. I know the issues. Al Horford, issue number 1. At some point, Porzingis is probably going to come back. Okay, but we're looking at 3 months into the year. That was the timeline given. And then Porzingis is not exactly known for being the world's fastest healer. And I doubt that they bring him along quickly on a team that won the championship. and has aspirations of another deep playoff run. Issue number 2, Al Horford's going to rest back-to-backs. That's just a thing. Sorry, it is. But I don't care because you're getting him in the 11th round and you're going to squeeze out a guy that when he started games last year, he was a top 50 per game guy in 9 category leagues, just on a little bit of everything. A little bit of everything with good percentages. That's the Al Horford way. So give him a little bit more of a little bit of everything over last year. And even despite being the backup center technically last season, he was number 86 in 9 cat. Turnovers being one of the particularly strong ones. And I get it. Horford's not going to be as impressive in 8 cat as 9. And maybe he's not a 3 airplane emoji in 8 category leagues. But in 9, in my opinion, if you can draft someone in the 11th round that gives you 4th or 5th round per game numbers, even if they have a timestamp on their value, you got to do it. Mike Conley at number 129 is also a 3 airplanes emoji player. I don't care that they said he's going to rest a few extra games this season. He only took 6 off last year. That could mean an extra 4. I don't think they're going to sit him on every back-to-back. I think they're going to need him in there while the team is figuring out how to put the pieces together with their new toys in Randall and DiVincenzo. And Conley's the guy that makes that team go. I know they've got Gobert, and I know they got Randall, and I know they have Anthony Edwards. When Conley was out, they looked disjointed. The offense was all out of whack. They can still guard people because they have some really good defenders. But he's the guy that orchestrates the offense. He's the floor general. They're so goofy with him not out there. And you'd be like, oh, well, they're going to let Donte DiVincenzo run point. Yeah, maybe, but he ain't going to know how to do it on day 1. So I expect Conley to still gun for the 68 to 74 games threshold. Call it 71 to split the difference. That'll be around league average. I still expect him to play 28 plus minutes per ball game. He was at 29 last year. And in 29, he was top 70. Great. And if you're punting rebounds or points or field goal percent, it's even better. I love me a Mike Conley punt points roster. That's delightful. Where was Conley last year if you punted points? 48. Yeah. That's the good stuff. Horford was 54, by the way. These punt points options at the end of the draft. Number 130 is Marcus Smart, who I've been kind of mean to, and I realize I need to bring my mean quotient down a little bit. Smart last year had a weird role. He was supposed to be the point guard for this team and distribute, but then, of course, Ja was suspended for a while, and Bane ended up kind of running everything, and Jaren Jackson Jr. took all these shots. It's not really clear what Smart's role is going to be on the Grizzlies this year, but I would assume it's a whole lot of defense, threes, and some assists. Last year he was number 113 on 14 and 4 with 2 steals a ball game. I don't think he's averaging 14 points again this year, but I think the 4.3 assists could actually be a tiny bit better, just having better players around him and maybe playing more than 30 minutes per ball game. So could we get like 11 and 5 with high ones in steals? Sure. And again, I don't really mind taking a slightly higher turnover guy here because generally my other picks have been lower turnover guys. And on top of all of that, listen, I was just talking about punting points. Marcus Smart is a guy who was a pretty good punt points option also. Not as much last year with the 14 points, but that's a number that's coming down this season. So straight 9 cat, he might not be inside the top 100. In fact, he probably ends up somewhere in the 110 to 130 range. But again, if you're punting points, I think he gets inside the top 100. Punting field goal, you get inside. And punting turnovers, most likely he's inside that top 100 as well, which gives me 1 airplane emoji. And most of the guys on this list that have 1 airplane, there's like some thing that's not quite right with them, whether it's like you need to be punting 1 thing to get him to a good value, or in the case of Norman Powell, you're getting like 3 weeks of good and then 17 weeks of bad. Number 134 is Deni Avdija, who was very interesting down the stretch last year. And with Shaedon Sharpe out for some amount of time for the Portland Trail Blazers, we can see Avdija kind of get going. But I also want to temper my expectations because down the stretch last year when he was kind of the last man standing for the Wizards, I guess it was like Avdija and Jordan Poole. Deni averaged 18, 9, and 4.5. His defensive stats are his percentages are and his threes are and his turnovers are kind of And that was, honestly, that's why it was hard for him to post value, because he was really just like the three main counting stats as a positive. I guess the blocks at 0.8 weren't bad down the stretch, but really it was those main things. So is there enough usage in Portland to get him back somewhere near those marks? I truly don't know. But again, if you're sort of working your way down the progression board and your 3 airplane emoji guys are gone and Deni's hanging out there with 1 airplane emoji, he's worth a shot because there is that built-in upside. And if you're punting free throw, he takes a jump forward. And if you're punting turnover, he takes a jump forward. And a guy that's in that 100 to 120 range who has an obvious one down thing, sometimes you can kind of build around that. If you have a really, really, really good free throw shooting team, you are effectively drafting your next player as if you're punting free throws, because it doesn't matter if you take a Deni who's doing some damage to it, but not enough to really make an impact. But again, that's what gives him 1 airplane here instead of 2, is because I do think he probably needs one thing to be ignored to get him into that proper discussion. Andrew Wiggins at 136. This is very much a like, well, why not Wiggins kind of thing. Down the stretch last year, he was number 133 in 28 minutes a ball game. That's a number that might go up. He took 12.7 shots during that stretch. That's a number that could go up a little bit. I'm not going to count on it. I think he's a bit of a long shot, but you got to replace Klay Thompson somehow. And there's only so much more that Kuminga could do. And there's only so much that someone like a Buddy Hield or a DeAnthony Melton is going to come in and do. Wiggins is the guy that was already there and kind of understands the way things fit. So maybe we get an Andrew Wiggins that takes 14 shots per game instead of 12.5. And if that's the case, hello, creeps inside or very close to the top 100. And if you're punting one of the 2 percentages, ta-da, that's how he gets inside. At 138 with 1 airplane is Donte DiVincenzo. I don't think we really truly know what Donte's going to be this season, but I would point to the Warriors year, a couple seasons back now, where he averaged 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 1.3 steals, and 2 3-pointers on bad field goal and decent free throw with not a ton of turnovers. I think you're looking at a guy who's not going to be relied upon to score a whole lot. Randall, Anthony Edwards, those are the guys that are going to be doing a lot of the scoring. Conley, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, the other guys in the starting lineup. And then you've got Naz Reid, who's going to come in and chuck up 10 shots real quick. So Donte, 7, 8, 8.5 shots per game. He was 112, the rank that year. But, again, we are 1 category away from being inside the top 100. And for DiVincenzo, points was the weakest category at only 9.5. If you punted points 2 years ago, he was number 73. Because you get the boards, the assists, the steals, the threes. You get it without him ruining your field goal percent. It wasn't good, but he didn't take very many. And so that's why I think I would consider DiVincenzo in this range. This one, okay. KCP is on the board. And I know, like, just from a strict boring standpoint, he is pretty much the definition of it. But again, if we're gonna say, oh yeah, punt everybody's worst category, punt KCP's, which is basically scoring. He had 10 points a game last year. If you punted points, he was number 79. Because again, you got steals, blocks, some threes. You got it on okay percentages with low turnovers. Yes, you'd obviously love to have more rebounding. That's just not his jam. And more scoring, and frankly, more than 1.6 threes, which might be the case this year in Orlando because they need the spacing and frankly, the scoring more than the Denver Nuggets did. But does the efficiency take a small hit? It's possible. I think you're probably looking at a guy who finishes somewhere near 100 in traditional 9-cat ranks. And again, if you're not worried about scoring, then he pushes up another 2 rounds. That's why these guys are one airplane. Grayson Allen is a 0 airplane emoji player. He's number 143. He's on the board if all of these other options are gone. And if they're all gone, you say, all right, screw it. I'll take Grayson Allen, mostly because he was so freaking efficient last year, and he ranked 58 because of it, that even though we think his role is going to get smaller, and even though we think there's almost no way he's going to be as efficient scoring as last season, there's an outside shot that he does just enough to squeeze into the top 100. That's it. There's no real upside there. He's probably too boring, but it's a direction you can go if all these other guys are gone. Number 148 is Jonathan Isaac. That's a games cap only 2 airplane emoji guy, because like when he gets minutes, he's unbelievable. But in head-to-head, he's going to miss so many games and have weird ones where he plays 4 minutes that you didn't see coming. You're just going to be so frustrated with him. You can't have him in a league where you need everybody to play every night. But games cap, you can. You can stick him on your bench. He's a great last-round pick. If he gets going, Jonathan Isaac, like, what if he plays mid-20s in minutes for some kind of stretch? That's a top 50 guy from blocks and steals alone almost. It's easy to forget because it's basically been like 5 years since the last time he did something meaningful on the fantasy landscape. But that year, he was nuts. His numbers were crazy. Dennis Schroder, 0 airplane emoji. I don't like his fantasy game. I really don't. But I also understand that he's going to score and get assists. And those things are hard to find. And so if he's playing, 30 some odd minutes for a Brooklyn team that's just straight up bad, he's probably going to be ranked inside the top 150. And you better be punting field goal percent or possibly punting steals. You may need to punt 2 things. And that might be why he's a 0 airplane emoji guy. All right, now we're getting into the deeper chunk here. So we'll move a little faster, other than a few guys I want to spend some more time on. Buddy Hield is a 0 airplanes emoji guy. We don't know what his role is going to be on Golden State. I don't think you need to draft him. But at least we know that if things break his way, he does have the potential to be a very good fantasy player. So again, we're talking about guys on this episode that have a chance to be big leapers. I don't think Hield is going to be that guy. Make that very clear. But what if news comes out and the Warriors are just like, oh yeah, Buddy Hield, 6th man. He's going to get 26, 27 minutes and he's going to fire away. Then you add him. Ben Simmons at number 154 is 1 airplane emoji. Okay. Like, Simmons was bad last year. He's number 165 in 24 minutes a game on 6 points, 8 boards, and 6 assists. He doesn't get the steals and blocks like he used to, and I still can't really believe that his body's going to hold up to the rigors of an NBA season. But what if it does? If it does, you have a guy that has, in his history, been a top 50 fantasy play. And if you're punting free throws, even better. Or if you're punting points, even better. He is sort of Draymond Green-esque, but you don't have to spend any actual draft capital on him. So 1 airplane emoji on Simmons. You're not going out of your way to draft this dude because his body is completely busted at all of the seams. But he has a lot to prove. And so as a last rounder, once the 3 and 2 airplane emojis are gone, Simmons is one of the better 1 airplane emoji guys out there. Scoot Henderson at number 155. This one is very much a punt build guy. He's also going a lot sooner than 155 for whatever that's worth. But again, if you're looking for points and assists, look no further. There's just nobody at 155 that can rack up that combination, but you cannot care about turnovers. It's going to be bad. It's going to be so bad that there's no chance he'll be inside the top 100 in 9-cat. But there's an outside chance at like top 40, 50 in 8-cat. And there's an even better shot at top 100 if you're punting turnovers and field goal. So more of a team build kind of guy, but could be kind of fun. Gary Trent Jr. is a lot in the KCP mold. With Chris Middleton getting kid gloved a bit as per usual. Trent was 143 last year in Toronto. Probably plays an extra minute or 2 in Milwaukee. So you'll get the steals, you'll get the threes, you'll get it on not great percentages. It's tough for him to crack the top 100 without a truckload of usage. You probably need to be punting field goal for him to have a shot to get there. But what if? What if Dame goes down? That kind of stuff. I think you're probably better off not going this direction, but at least in terms of like, do I think he has a shot? Trent is 1 airplane emoji. Couple of 0 airplane emojis, guys, back to back. Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Andre Drummond. Jaquez is the more interesting of these two because like he's going to get to play a little bit, but they just have too many options to start the year. Butler, Bam, Rozier, Hero. Jaquez is not good enough at the other stuff to make up for no usage. He had 1 steal in 28 minutes a game last year. That was fine. Rebounds and assists were nothing special. Percentages were decent, actually, but he didn't knock down many threes to cover that. He needs a couple guys to get hurt. That's why he's a 0 airplane emoji, even if he gets more minutes this year. And Drummond, obviously, a 0 airplane emoji. His path to value is no Joel Embiid. So if your league allows handcuffs, that would be one to do. Alex Sarr is a 1 airplane emoji, not because I think he's going to do anything of note to start the season, but because of all the rookies floating around, he's the one whose fantasy game could translate across the board. And like you could make an argument that like a Donovan Clingan or a Zach Edey, maybe that translates better because they're big men and they can just sort of tumble into fantasy stuff. But among the guys who actually might have to touch the basketball, Alex Sarr can block shots. He can get steals. He can knock down sort of like part of a three-pointer. He can score. He can rebound a little bit. He has the ability to do things that are across the board with an okay field goal percent that these other rookies simply cannot. So this is not a play for someone that you want to deploy on opening night. And if you want to get off to a quick start, it's hard for me to suggest Sarr. But if you don't mind squatting on him, he probably ends up with a pretty good run from February on this year. The last 2 airplane emoji player on the board is at 164, and it's Dyson Daniels. I think he's going to play a lot for the Hawks. I don't know if he's going to start or not. I think the Hawks would be wise to bring Bojan Bogdanovic off the bench and bring that fire like last year. But they might start him because there's no DeJounte Murray anymore. But boy, you put Dyson Daniels next to Trae Young, you cover up a little bit of the defensive side that Bogdan cannot. But in any event, like what I look at with Dyson Daniels is there was that week and a half, 2 weeks where CJ McCollum was out early last year, and Daniels was up close to 2 steals a ball game. He was getting decent rebounds and assists, and he shot horribly. He shot like 32% from the field and like 65 at the free throw line. That's not going to hold. For those 2.5 weeks, he was just outside the top 100, but the only reason he wasn't in tighter was because he was having an awful shooting stretch, which that'll level off over an entire basketball season. So I think Daniels actually has a shot to be a top 100 guy straight away. And if you're punting points, which is probably going to be his weakest spot, there's a chance for even more. I like Dyson Daniels down in that run, but he's going to need to get 30 minutes to get there. Tari Eason, 1 airplane emoji at 167. He's just so good at rebounding and getting steals that I'm willing to take a shot on him this late. Knowing his minutes are probably going to be at 23, something like that to start the year. But if anybody gets out of his way or if he outplays anyone, that's how that gets up to 25 or 26, and that's when he really starts to make us think. D'Anthony Melton, 0 airplanes at 170. I just don't trust his back to hold up. But if he proves to us that he's healthy and suddenly he starts wedging himself into more minutes in that Warriors kind of wide open ball movement offense, that could be kind of fun for him. I don't think you need to draft him, though. Same story with Ayo Dosunmu at 173, who made my board of the 1 away club because the Bulls just have 1 too many guards. Frankly, I could argue 2 too many guards, but Ayo is so unbelievably efficient that he doesn't actually need to do that much to get to fantasy value. It's not going to happen out of the chute, especially not with them working Lonzo Ball back in. But if Ball goes down or if Levine gets traded or whatever, that's how Ayo is 1 to 2 creatures away. There's only 2 single airplane emojis left on the board, and we're going to get to them last. So here's 4 guys that have no airplane emojis. Bojan Bogdanovic. He's in Brooklyn now. Or wait, is he in Detroit now? Yeah, no, he's in Brooklyn now. Part of the Mikal Bridges trade. We have no idea what he's going to do. That team is rebuilding, but someone's going to have to score. And so it's possible that they're just like, you, Bogdanovic, go get us 19 points. And if that happens, then you're going to roster him. But I don't know that you need to draft him because the upside is like 100 range. Josh Green, who's likely the starting small forward or shooting guard, depending on where you put Brandon Miller for the Charlotte Hornets. I don't know that his fantasy game is going to translate, but he's going to have some opportunity, so keep one eye on Green. Precious Achiuwa in New York, if only because he's the seventh man on a team that literally has only 7 players I think they want to play. Or is he the 6th man and Deuce McBride is the 7th? In any event, there's just so many minutes in New York available, but I don't like Precious's fantasy game. And then Jalen Smith in Chicago is a 0 airplane emoji. He's, again, kind of a one-away guy. It looks like Vooch is going to be starting the year and doing his normal thing for the Bulls, but hey, you never know. My last 2 names at 174 are TJ McConnell, and at 288, it's Daniel Theis. McConnell is interesting, but not that interesting. He was very good down the stretch last year, but a lot of that was when Benedict Mathurin was out. McConnell was sitting just outside the top 100 during that run due to sort of a weirdly low number of steals. But he was out there, and he was going buck freaking wild when he had the ball in his hands. So anytime Tyrese Halliburton was off the floor, it was just like the TJ McConnell show. And he's a high field goal percent, assist steals expert, which is such a weird combination to be able to pull that I've been grabbing him in drafts specifically where I'm punting points or punting threes. So it probably does take a few things to get him there, but as like the latest of the late picks, now 13th round or 14th if your draft goes that far, he makes some sense. And Daniel Theis at 288, who, look, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat this one. Daniel Theis is probably not going to be a big minutes guy, but Missy is the only other center on the New Orleans Pelicans right now. Valanciunas is gone. Larry Nance is gone. Daniel Theis looks to be, and, you know, we can't base everything on a preseason game, but New Orleans had a ball game on, well, it'd be Monday, October 7th, and Theis was the starting center. And he played basically with the starting unit. He got 20 minutes in that game. He's going to be wide open with Zion and McCollum and DeJounte Murray and Brandon Ingram, who was out. Which, again, begs the question, when Ingram is in, does that push Herb Jones to the bench? Or does that push McCollum to the bench? Or does it push Theis to the bench? And do they start Zion at center? But Theis started at center in this one, and we don't actually know who's going to the bench when Brandon Ingram comes back. Stay tuned. There's like 3 teams out there where we care what they're doing during the preseason. Utah was one. New Orleans is one. There's a couple others floating around out there. Atlanta's going to be one probably as well, once we see the actual pieces together for a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, it's an unbelievably late grab, but the man could end up being the starting center for a competitive basketball team. He's not going to do much. Rebound, ball move, he'll get some assists, steals and blocks, that kind of thing. But Theis can also hit a 3. I'm not excited about it. I don't want this to come off like, oh, yeah, you got to do it. But I don't think it's that nuts. And that was your flyer list. I think it's 30-something. I've forgotten exactly what the number is. You guys asked. You said everybody else is doing it, Dan. You got to do one too. And so I did. And if everybody jumped off the bridge, yeah, I do that also. I'm a follower, man. I try to set trends, but nobody wants to do them. I tried to change calling sleepers to Smitties, and nobody wanted to do it. Well. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody. Tomorrow on the podcast, we will have a visit from Mitch Casey of the Ball Boys Fantasy Basketball Show. He'll be giving us his targets for the year. I want to get a mock draft going at some point in there because I really want to make sure that we're mocking enough on this new Yahoo board And we've been so busy trying to play catch up on redoing a lot of show types that we haven't had time to do that yet. So tomorrow we might get into some mocks again. If not, that'll certainly be soon. It's an extraordinarily busy week for me, so just keep an eye out for these shows. Subscribing and following on social, that's the way to know when stuff is dropping. I'm Dan Besbris at that on the socials for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for the 5-star reviews. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.